You have roughly the same number of hair follicles as a chimpanzee. Count every single one across your body, and the total nearly matches our closest primate relatives. The difference is in what those follicles produce. Over millions of years, most of them shrank. They now grow invisible. Microscopic strands called vellus hair, commonly known as peach fuzz. Only in a few specific places does the human body still grow thick, deeply pigmented terminal hair. This is not a minor detail of anatomy. The pattern of where we kept thick hair and where we lost it is one of the most debated puzzles in human evolution. Scientists have argued over it for more than a century, and the argument gets most complicated when it reaches one specific patch: the thick hair covering the lower face and jaw of human males. To understand why the beard survived, you first need to understand what destroyed everything else. Between 2 and 3 million years ago, the African climate shifted. Dense, shaded woodland dried out and gave way to vast open savanna. Our ancestors had to operate in sustained, punishing heat, and they were the only primates on the planet who responded by shedding almost all of their body hair. Gorillas kept theirs. Chimpanzees kept theirs. Every lemur, every monkey, every ape on Earth stayed fully covered. Humans became the single dramatic outlier. In evolutionary biology, an outlier that extreme does not happen without powerful selective pressure pushing it. The leading explanation involves heat and endurance. Early humans were not fast. They lacked the sprinting speed of most predators and had no natural weapons suited for ambush hunting. What they could do was run for a very long time. Anthropologist Nina Jablonski, who has spent decades studying the evolution of human skin at Penn State, argues that the critical bottleneck was thermoregulation during sustained physical activity. The strategy was persistence hunting, tracking prey like antelope across open terrain for hours under equatorial sun, staying on the animal's trail long after it sprinted ahead, until it finally collapsed from heat exhaustion. No other predator hunted this way. It was effective, but it created a dangerous physiological problem. Overheating kills faster than starvation, and thick body hair works as insulation, trapping a warm layer of stagnant air against the skin, holding heat in at exactly the moment the body desperately needs to release it. The human body appears to have solved this problem by making a remarkable trade. It gave up the fur and replaced it with an unmatched network of sweat glands. Humans carry more eccrine sweat glands per square inch of skin than nearly any other mammal on Earth, up to 5 million of them distributed across the entire body. While other animals pant like dogs or sweat through limited patches like horses, humans flood their entire skin surface with a thin, watery solution that cools the blood as it evaporates. But that system has a critical requirement. It only works on exposed skin. Hair blocks evaporation. A fur-covered body turns sweat into a soggy, insulating mess instead of a cooling mechanism. The sweat mats the hair down and sits against the skin, trapping heat rather than releasing it. Remove the fur, and the evaporative cooling system works with striking efficiency. The body becomes its own radiator. That explanation elegantly accounts for the disappearance of body hair. But it creates a direct contradiction when you look at the remaining patches. The scalp kept its hair because it acts as a shield against ultraviolet radiation hitting the top of the skull and the brain underneath. Eyebrows and eyelashes redirect sweat and debris away from the eyes. Underarm and groin hair reduces friction during sustained movement and helps trap chemical signals. Every remaining patch of terminal hair has a clear functional explanation. Every patch except one. A thick beard traps heat directly over the jaw and neck, exactly where major blood vessels sit close to the surface of the skin. If thermoregulation was the pressure that stripped hair from the chest, the back, and the limbs, then the beard should have disappeared along with everything else. It didn't, which means a different evolutionary force was holding it in place. Charles Darwin noticed this exact contradiction back in 1871. Fresh off decades of work on natural selection, he turned his attention to traits that could not be explained by survival alone. In The Descent of Man, he observed that the beard offered no clear survival advantage, yet it persisted reliably across human males. His explanation was that natural selection wasn't the force preserving it. Sexual selection was. Sexual selection keeps a trait alive not because it helps an organism survive, but because it helps that organism compete for mates or intimidate rivals. The peacock's tail is the standard example. Those enormous, brightly colored feathers make escaping predators harder, but they make attracting a peahen far easier. The reproductive advantage outweighs the survival cost, and the trait persists. Darwin suspected the beard worked on a similar principle. Modern research has tested that idea in ways he never could have. Evolutionary psychologist Barnaby Dixon has conducted multiple cross-cultural studies testing exactly this. In one design, participants from populations as different as Europeans in New Zealand and Polynesians in Samoa judged photographs of the same men at varying stages of facial hair growth, from fully clean-shaven to heavy full beards. The results follow a consistent pattern across populations. Heavier beards are rated as looking more physically dominant. They are perceived as markers of older age and greater maturity. They are associated with men who appear more aggressive and more capable of defending resources or social status. Darwin's original prediction was that beards evolved because women preferred them. The modern data tells a more complicated story. Beards do not consistently make men more attractive to women. That preference varies widely between individuals, cultures, and even within the same population, depending on how common beards are at the time. When beards are rare, women tend to rate them more favorably. When they are everywhere, clean-shaven faces gain the advantage. Instead, the beard's primary evolutionary function appears to be intrasexual competition. It signals dominance to other males, not desirability to females. The trait persists not because women selected for it, but because other men responded to it. That finding makes biological sense when you examine what drives beard growth at the hormonal level. Facial hair is controlled by testosterone and its more potent derivative, dihydrotestosterone, or DHT. The skin of the human jaw and chin contains an unusually high concentration of androgen receptors, higher than almost any other region of the body. A full beard is not just hair, it is an external readout of internal hormonal activity. It advertises biological maturity and the androgen levels associated with physical aggression in a way that is visible from a distance, instantly, without any need for direct interaction. Ancient humans could not run a blood panel on a rival, but they could look at a man's face and get a rough, subconscious read on his developmental stage and underlying hormonal profile. In a small tribal group where social hierarchies determined access to food, mates, and protection, that kind of instant assessment carried enormous practical value. You could size up an ally, a stranger, or a potential threat before exchanging a single word or making any physical commitment. That is one layer of the explanation. There is also a second. In 2020, University of Utah biologist David Carrier, along with mechanical engineer Stephen Nailway and researcher Ethan Besseris, published a study testing whether facial hair might serve as passive physical protection. Their reasoning started with a simple observation. Human males commit the vast majority of physical violence, and most of that violence involves fists directed at the face. To test the idea, they covered a fiber epoxy composite designed to simulate bone with sheepskin. Some samples kept the fleece intact to represent a bearded jaw. Others were sheared clean. They then subjected both to controlled impacts using a drop weight system. The results were clear. The samples with fleece absorbed 37% more energy than the sheared ones and withstood 16% more force before fracturing. It is not armor, but it is enough of a cushion to matter. The jaw is the bone most frequently broken in fistfights. Emergency room data confirms this consistently, and the beard sits directly over it. As Carrier has pointed out, a broken jaw 5,000 years ago without an orthopedic surgeon would have been a life-threatening injury. You cannot eat with a shattered mandible. In a world without medical intervention, that kind of fracture could easily kill. The study won the 2021 Ig Nobel Peace Prize, an award for research that makes people laugh first and think second. But the underlying logic is serious. If early human hierarchies were partly maintained through physical confrontation, any trait that reduced the chance of a catastrophic facial injury would carry a genuine selective advantage. So you end up with two entirely separate evolutionary pressures acting on the same patch of skin. One pressure stripped hair from most of the body because insulation was killing endurance hunters on the open savanna. The other pressure kept hair firmly attached to the jaw because on that particular location, hair was performing two entirely different jobs that had nothing to do with temperature. It was broadcasting hormonal information to rivals, and it was absorbing some of the impact when those rivalries turned physical. The answer to why men have beards is not really about hair at all. It is about information and protection, two forces that operated in a space where thermoregulation no longer had the final word. For most of human history, long before language was complex enough to negotiate status through conversation, a man's face was already communicating to every person who looked at it. The density of his beard told other males something real about his biological maturity, his hormonal profile, and possibly his willingness to engage in conflict. Today, you can shave that signal off in 2 minutes with a disposable razor. A biological broadcast that took millions of years of selective pressure to build gets washed down the sink before breakfast. Or you can spend months carefully growing it back, grooming and shaping a feature your ancestors never had any say in producing. Either way, you are not managing dead protein. You are editing a signal your body has been broadcasting since long before humans could speak. Your ancestors never had a choice in the matter. You make one every morning, usually without thinking about what it took to put it there.